Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Destroy Before Listening, which is a conversation between myself, Pete Byrne and SNED. This is a part 2 follow-on episode. He was the first guest on episode 1 of the podcast back in October 2020 and is back to discuss the 90s period. Get ready to expect lots of talk about DIY touring and playing in the groups One by One, Health Hazard, Suffer and John Holmes amongst others. We then talk about his switch to tour managing for bands such as Drop Dead, Los Cudos, His Hero Is Gone, Detestation and Submission Hold. Plenty of the highs and lows are recounted for what was a pivotal decade in punk and hardcore worldwide. Please check out the Amorphous-Pieces shop where you can pick up the 2 books he has published, From the Garage to the Station and Beyond and the new Raising Hell zine Omnibus, along with other books, posters and jigsaws. Check out the logo if nothing else, done by Nick Blinko, which is cool as fuck. If you want to support this podcast, the shop also sells a nice Destroy Before Listening slip mat. You can follow on Instagram as well at Destroy Before Listening. The outro tracks are from the One by One WFMU session, which was recorded in April 1994 whilst on the US tour, which he talks about in the interview. Thanks. Picking up from where the last one left off, that's you moved to Leeds and entering the 90s basically, like what's going on band-wise and thought-wise as to your situation that you're in now.
We're pretty much doing the 90s here, and that's just... It was a very hectic time of lots of bands and tours and records and things like that. So, and house moves and all the rest of it. So I moved to Leeds in the summer of 1988 from Newcastle, and I wanted a change in life and everything, and I got offered a room to live in. So it was just a nice, the right thing to do at the right time, and it was a new chapter in my life. Yeah, I was still in the band Generic. We had a change in lineup and we became a Leeds-based band, and that band existed for about a year. Sort of right around when I moved to Leeds, started up a band with Pig and Monkey and Percy called Pleasant Valley Children. I remember we had a quick practice in our basement in the new place I just moved into, and it was just all worked really well, and it's a great band, and we just got stuck in. The place I was living was like a short-term housing co-op, and it was the housing association had a lot of empty properties that they were waiting to do up as the team of doer-uppers go around doing up houses or whatever. And we were able to live in places while they were empty to stop them being, vandalized or whatever. And so that was really good because I had somewhere to live. Over the course of the couple of years in Leeds, that waiting list got shorter and shorter, and eventually we had nowhere to live, homeless. And that's when we started. I got a room in a squat, and then me and my friends squatted another place. And there's a whole story of Leeds squatting, and that there was a landlord called Lawton, and he had about 200 or so derelict properties, all around. And somebody got a hold of a list somehow of these properties, and that's where the sort of squatting culture picked up a lot, because people were moving there from the lakes and Darlington and Newcastle, wherever, just different parts of the country, and just were able to just open up a house and just start, so this cultural thing was happening in Leeds just by pure chance of this rogue landlord. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that was going on. I moved house 4, 5, 6 times in that sort of couple of years. There was a lot of moving about going on. Into that whole story, Pleasant Valley Children played some gigs around the UK and played a lot of sort of one-off gigs, that you could get back home from. In 1990, in the summer, we went on this tour on the Interrail.
That's something that just wouldn't happen now as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
or the opportunity to travel and as a band and do gigs.
What a time to be alive. I mean, so you paid your money. I think it was 100 quid or 150 quid, something like that. you got this phone book sized timetable thing of all the trains all over Europe, and you studied that, and you had a full month. So the tour was a couple of weeks out of the month, but loads and loads of friends were just getting these Interrail tickets and just taking off for the summer, and just going wherever. So some people were out there before the tour and some people were out there after the tour and so on. And we just all met up in this part of the tour, which was, it wasn't extensively around Europe, but we just headed towards Italy via Germany and Switzerland, and gigs that would, we had contacts and friends that would set us up gigs. And the tour was headed towards, Rome basically was the main event. When we spent a week in Rome at the squatted Fort Prenestino, which it's so hard to explain, but it's this, well, a Roman fort, but I mean, like this huge circular kind of like walls around this place, walls around this place, and there was houses at the far distant parts of it. Like it was just a big space, and what would happen there would be, it wasn't just all about us playing our gig. It was like, so we played outside, but it was just that all the people from the area and all the squatters and all would come on a Saturday night. They would just come on no matter what entertainment was on. People just got together and had a big social. So we happened to play in front of a lot of people at this social, and like people from the band were friends with the people that lived there. So that's how we ended up spending our time there. And the other gig in Italy was in Potenza, which is further south. You have to go through Naples to get there. And friends of ours that had visited in Leeds were from that town. And we played outside the youth house on this outdoor stage on this hill. And there was some like blocks of flats in the distance. And turns out that's where people from the police lived. And they weren't too happy about all the noise going on. And they rolled up and they had our passports and were like, what are you doing here? We were quite unusual to be there. And this was during the World Cup as well. So we were kind of getting pulled over and as if we were like somehow involved in football hooliganism, even though we were like carrying guitars around and stuff. So all that atmosphere was going on. And in Italy as well, because there was just, everyone's out there honking the horns of their cars and chucking tellies out the window and stuff. And it was just kind of crazy. Contro Mondiale, I think, is what people were shouting. Anyway, so that was our time in Italy. But mostly, just talking about the freedom you had with the trains. Like me and my girlfriend went down to Spain before the tour. You just slept overnight on the train and just woke up in another country. Just saying to someone, it's just like a day rover, like a day rider bus ticket, but bigger. It's like all of Europe. It's, so, and I mean, I love trains, so it's just the greatest. What a time to be alive, And it was the last year that I was able to do this because this only ran up to people aged 25 and below. So this was my last chance to do that. So at least I managed to get to do that in my lifetime. And
is this like your mid-20s, 25 when you start One by One then?
That was at the end of that year, yeah. The Pleasant Children came back from that tour. But actually, Percy had left the tour halfway through and didn't come to Italy. And he went off to Germany, I think, to watch the football, I think. And so we carried on with the three of us and played the gigs. But the band didn't last much beyond the end of that year. We did a final gig. We had a different bass player, Richard, and I think we only played the one gig with maybe. But so that was kind of the end of that band. The other people in the band started another band with a different name, like Bug-Eyed, which was more or less the same people apart from me. That was the story with PVC. So Pleasant Children was done by beginning of 91. Yeah, it was our last gig, and our LP came out about that the same time as we just split up. One by One came about. Yeah, I was knocking about with Mickey, who I used to play in Generic Blood Robots with, who I've known since I was a teenager, and Alec was like a new friend who was playing and lived with Mickey and was playing music with him up in Newcastle in this band called Anything But That, who I knocked about with them for a few gigs around England, and it was just, we had a really good time hanging out, and that band kind of slowed down or whatever, or stopped, and those two, Mickey and Alec, wanted to do something with a bit more faster and so on. So they came down to Leeds and kidnapped me, or whatever. Is that the right word?
Napped you.
Collared me. We went and had a practice in the cellar in one of the other squatted houses, and it worked out pretty good, you know. And it was funny because then I started actually going back to Newcastle a little bit more than I hadn't been back for quite a while. That band then just got to work, and we would practice a lot, played a lot, and.
I've got a question which I think I can't remember if I've asked you before, but Generic and One by One, do they, as band names, do they both come from Flipper tracks? They're both Flipper songs, but like, did you consciously kind of take them?
Well, when I first met Mickey, actually, before we'd even, or maybe just when when I met Mickey, like fucking years before Generic. It's funnily enough, the first record he ever lent me was Generic by Flipper. But yeah, I mean, I just take band names. You go look at your record covers until you find a name, you know, until you find something that'll work. With One by One, we had a hell of a time trying to think of a name for the band. That was the thing. And there was all sorts of terrible suggestions. And it was just, I don't know. I ended up with that, found it on the flip. I was like, well, that's a name. I mean, it's not an amazing name, but it's just hard to find a name for the band. We were already playing gigs and we didn't have a name, you know. It's kind of one of those things. So yeah, they both came from Flipper.
One by One gets to work pretty quickly, and you get your 7-inch out and do a peel session as well. So things are moving pretty quickly for that band, more so than I guess anything up to that point.
Yeah, it's 1991, and we would just play all kinds of gigs, like just around anything that was going as well. Okay, so what happened One by One is we practiced a few practices. We got about Mickey. I'll tell you what it was. Is Mickey and Alec already had these songs? You know, they'd already written the songs to great. You know, arranged them really well. So they just needed someone to drum them, really. So it came together really fast for that reason. You know, they were quite prolific with the songs as well. So pretty early on, we only had a few practices, I think, and then we were like, we had 6 songs or something. So we went and recorded them at Studio 64 in Middlesbrough. It was like they're friends of ours, Michael and Christine, would record us, and it came out really well. So we thought, well, why don't we put it out as a 7-inch, you know? And then Flat Earth sort of had been dormant for a couple of years, so that was Flat Earth release number 5, and it was a 7-inch by One by One. And then we had something to kind of put out there, you know. Here we are, and yeah, we sent one to John Peel, and he played it, and he played it again, and he sort of was really into it and stuff. So that was like, oh wow, you know, it was great. Somebody had cancelled on him for a session one week, and it was like 2 days' notice or something. And he called Alec up and was like, "Do you want to record a session the day after tomorrow in London?"
Mm-hmm.
And which is fine. But then I didn't have a phone. I lived in Leeds and didn't have a phone or any way of them contacting me. So I'm listening to John Peel one night in our front room, and and he comes out with like, if the drummer of One by One is listening, could you please call Alec? There's some radio work and something. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I call Alec, and it's like, then Mickey and Alec, they show up 2 days later, and we jump in the van and off down to London to the Maida Vale, and, you know, get to be in the BBC, sitting behind a gigantic mixing desk or whatever, and did some songs. So that was really cool. We got paid some money, which was really cool because we needed money to keep the van running. And yeah, and like, you know, it's quite a drive back overnight and everything. And, you know, it's just funny at the BBC because it was Mike Robinson, I think, was the producer. Yeah, it was. And it was just these, like, you know, BBC well-to-do kind of people, professional people, and then just this scumbags like us coming in, just like really unemployed, scruffy people, shitty equipment.
Well, they're probably used to it.
Yeah, they're used to it in the cafe. Oh, here's another fucking John Peel band, you know. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So I like that disparity. So yeah, out in a Swiss cottage or wherever it is at Maida Vale. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, we did that. That's pretty cool. It got played in the summer of that year. A couple of months after that, yeah, whenever it got aired on the radio, we went on tour in Europe with Oi Polloi. We had we were the new but not known, but we had the vehicle, we had the transit van, and I had a car as well. So Oi Polloi and they had the names, so we got some gigs because they were known. So we toured together, and and that was fantastic times, and I went on to spend a lot of time around with that band and those people. We went on this European tour with Oi Polloi, which was went to Berlin and went to Switzerland and Dusseldorf, and what we were very excited about was going to Prague, because that's pretty exotic, and it was not long after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and so we set off from Berlin, and the map looked pretty good, looked like motorways all the way to Prague, but the reality was like kind of cobbled roads and all kinds of construction, no real services or anything, and you're kind of like, camping out by the side of the road, eating fucking cold tins of lentils and shitting in a bucket or whatever. So it was pretty grim, and it took actually 2 days to get to the border. Went along to Dresden and then down, and it's just fascinating, kind of bleak but fascinating, going through former East Germany. Anyway, we got all the way to the border of Czech Republic. The border people, they just took one look at us, and just a shitty van and the shitty car and scruffy bastards, and just
fuck off.
Just said, fucking turn around, go away, fuck off. Like, you're not getting in, and without any reason or logic. And we'd spent so long trying to get there. And this was such a big deal to play at the 007 in Prague, and back in the day. So that was a shitter, There we were, tired, destitute. And so we just camped out in some woods near the border, before, because it was late. And before heading back to Berlin the next day. Got back to Berlin to stay with our friend Ilya, and he was like, "What? You camped there?" He was the particular region, and he's like, "What the fuck are we doing?" And that's where the neo-Nazis go out, like weapon training and fucking stuff. It's like, just you sort of imagine some horror film where you're camping out, Nazi stormtroopers come along through the woods.
Did you have any trouble was there any trouble at gigs from skinheads and that kind of right-wing thing in Europe?
Not on that tour that I can recall, no. The Berlin gig was just pretty much, it was loads and loads of skins, actually, but they were not fascist skins, just skinhead skins, sharp skins, because people were really into, because Oi Polloi people are like, it's Oi, so they always get skins at the gigs, but then the band are actually these sort of long-haired, scruffy layabouts. They're always like, you're the band. So the demographic was like that, but it's nothing to do with anything really. It's just funny. So that was that tour anyway. During that summer, I'd moved over to Bradford. A few of us had, and Alec and Sarah moved down from the northeast to Bradford as well. Not long afterwards, there was it was in the same way that Leeds was a sort of bit of a magnet from the squatting scene. That the 1 in 12 club was a kind of magnet for, for some people to come to town and get involved in that, and that's where my heart was at. And we went and moved over there, and I was living in Bradford for the rest of the 90s. We were saving up as well. Me and my girlfriend at the time is a New Zealander, and was going back to her family's for the winter time, for half a year.
Yeah.
And I, so there was some serious saving up of money and borrowing and various raising of money and selling stuff off or whatever, and raising the money to get over there, And so we headed off over there and went via America. So we had friends in LA, in Long Beach, and we had places to stay up in San Francisco, Oakland as well. So we had a kind of a holiday on the way there, and LA was pretty mental for just gunfire and, and all this stuff. It was not long before the LA riots and stuff. And all the roads were just crazy 10-lane fucking roads full of... It was like being in a sort of dystopian future, some of it. And then we land in New Zealand, and it's totally going back in time, and it was really quite quaint,
Yeah.
It reminded me of the set of Neighbours or something. I know that's not New Zealand, I know that's Australia, but it was just a slower pace. We stayed at the family's place. We met up with some people there, some punk rockers, and made some friends and toured around New Zealand. So it was a wonderful time. Meanwhile, back at home, Mickey and Alec were busy trying to mix the One by One album that I'd recorded tracks before leaving the country. It was a nice time in New Zealand, but I was really quite keen to get back to Bradford, get back with the band, get on tour, get records out. And Alec had stepped up. He was doing my mail order when I was away, and he was like, if there's anything I can do. And it was kind of like, yeah, well, we could do this record label together. And so we sort of grew the label and built the label more. But between the two of us, So
yeah, this is Flat Earth.
This is Flat Earth Records. Yeah. So I came back from New Zealand, and then we had like some gigs right away. We actually I got off the plane. I was in London a day, and then I took the tube out to some outlying tube station, and they passed by on the M25 and in the transit van and off to Belgium to do a few gigs. So it's like straight off the plane, more or less. And we saw, Born Against we played with there. And then they came over to England on that same tour. And I remember we played in Durham with them, and it was like the first time I'd seen Voorhees. It was like a new band at the time. And this sort of hardcore was going on in the UK again, and music was getting a bit more interesting for me, at least,
Well, the early 90s, 92 especially, seems to be like a kind of real renaissance period, because like the stuff you'd mentioned to me, it's, Born Against, Iconoclast, Nation of Ulysses, Rorschach, and Neurosis, all in like kind of such a short period of time. It's quite like a full-on experience.
I mean, we played with and/or put on like all of those bands at that time as well, so it was kind of, and again, you get to know people and you get to network a bit, and it was so I got friends out of those to this day. The story with Rorschach playing at the 1 and 12 is that we used to have like a booking, just like bits of paper just by the phone. Bands would ring up all the time, or people, do you want to put my band on? It's someone you've never heard of, and whoever was around would answer the phone. There wasn't really a proper policy particularly, and there was just this note, and it said RAWSHACK, like Raw Shack, like Stan Webb's Chicken Shack or something. And like I just thought it was some boogie blues band. But I kind of looked at it and I was, Rorschach, could it be Rorschach? And it was the guy who'd organised the tour. He'd done a real poor job on it. I think they only did like 3 gigs or something over here. And
okay.
So anyway, I was like, yeah, you mean Rorschach? Yeah, I want to. So 2 weeks notice or whatever it was, put them on at the club and stuff. So, and Neurosis played the club as well, but that was like later in 92. They had an agent and stuff, and they had like a proper gig with guarantees, and it fell through, I think, in Leeds. So I picked up the slack with so I got to do the gig, and that's the first time I had to deal with things like contracts and stuff. But, so it was like, oh, fuck, But like the guy from Alternative Tentacles was Nick Evans, who used to be in Generics. So I already knew him. And also Neurosis guys from punk rock, and, they were totally cool. It's like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to, we're not really strict about the contract. It was just, so that was really good. They must be fucking deaf, because I remember being in the 1 and 12 lift. Like there used to be a lift in the 1 and 12 with this really loud bell, and usually people you'd be lifting equipment up the step up in the lift, and you would have this bell would go off. Usually people would be really startled, and that lot didn't bat an eyelid. It's like, fucking hell. There's a lot of interesting new music coming out of America, USA, and there's Man as a Bastard as well was another key band for me. And to me, it was like kind of, oh, they're like us, but they're from another place. I felt a kinship to a lot of these bands. Yeah, like, because actually Karen's debut 1 by 1 was with Rorschach at that gig at the 1 and 12.
Oh, so, okay.
So Karen had met Mickey, and she'd moved over here, and she joined the band on vocals, and so the band became much more dynamic, I think, and was getting better and better. And we set off, with our friend Sedition, a well-known band from Scotland, who we were busy with putting their album together for the label, and that was when the label really started elevating a bit. We did a tour with Sedition in Europe in 92, so that was what I was trying to get to, and that was around Belgium, Holland, Germany. We had a nice little transit van, and they had like a big mad bus, and all kinds of characters would jump in the back of. So it was just a great time with Sedition, and we went on to do like 2 more, numerous more tours with them together, and it was real lifelong friends, and a really special time.
Right, 1 by 1 is running sort of concurrently with Health Hazard, which is the sort of newer startup in 1993.
Yeah, pretty much. So me and Alec were playing together in 1 by 1 and doing the record label together and everything. And 1 by 1 was 2 people were in Newcastle and 2 were in Bradford, so you had this kind of distance band. And I don't know, we had a lot of time on our hands, being unemployed. So Health Hazard started up when Mandy and Chris were in a band with Rich Militia and a band called Biohazard, not the American band.
No.
Bradford band. They were raging, there was some good bands around then. And that band finished. Those two wanted to do another band. So me and Alex, I don't know how it ended up. We were sat trying to think of a name, and we had the Hazard bit, and then it was sort of just changed the bio to Health. And we did like a really early demo at Fulton Street, which was just across the road from the 1 and 12. It was like 8-track studio, and it took off. Yeah, like this lunatic in France, Lorenzo, was just really, really excited about it. And I want to make a record by you. And he made thousands of copies of this 7-inch we did, and it kind of took off. And Health Hazard was only going about 2 years, but we toured like a lot. We went to Europe, we went to Ireland, all over, and just so that's what happened with that band. And both Health Hazard and 1 by 1 were finished by the end of 1994. So I also moonlighted for Doom on bass and had a trip to Spain and Portugal, which was just insanely long drives. But there was an amazing gig at Lisbon at the far reaches of it. So there was that tour. That was in February. And then we went on tour in the spring with 1 by 1 and Sedition for the second tour we did together. We had putting their album out at that time and everything. And we got as far as Poland. We'd never been to Poland before. And we were only about an hour into Poland from the border, going east from out of Berlin towards Poznan. And there was like, we had a van crash, and it was fucking horrific and brutal, and it's almost hard to talk about. But and I'd managed to forget to even say it because it's that bigger thing. But anyway, we just caught a skid on us. It was like the road was wet or oily or whatever. Like I don't know. I was just sitting in the van, and we caught a bit of a skid. And it sort of went round and round, and we thought we were coming out of the skid, but the back wheel hit like a curb, and the fucking van flipped over down this hill. And I mean, we were upside down and then back round again. It rolled down this hill. And in that moment, when you're rolling around in like a washing machine or whatever, it's like, I'm going to die in like any second now. It was that kind of moment. I don't know. I was kind of blanked out completely, and I just heard Alec going, get out of the van, get out of the van. And I almost imagined it to, like in the films, to fucking explode or something. But anyway, we were uninjured with the exception of Fazzy, our roadie, driver. He wasn't driving at the time. He was at the back. He had to go to hospital, and he had medical insurance, and he got flown home and stuff in the end. And then we had this traumatic time with Polish police turning up and taking Mickey and Karen at the police station and giving us shit and stuff, and it was like we were like in shock. So it's just a horrible thing. It's kind of hard to talk about. So I had that moment in life, where like, fucking, that could have been it all. Could have been all the end of everything. Anyway, it wasn't, but it was the end of the van. The van was fucked. Sedition were driving behind us, so they saw the whole thing unfurl in front of them. So they had their van. So I guess some people took the train back to Berlin, and a lot of people piled into their van, and we all kind of trudged back to Berlin. And that part of the tour was fucked. Anyway, that was traumatic. The rest of the tour was great. Actually, we had. It's amazing how much of a party we had, because we were so glad to be alive that we were just like, that we suddenly had this zest for life more than ever. And, there was some great gigs on the tour as well, like even towards the end of the tour. We had to get like a hire car and all this shit you had to go through. Okay, that was a ball ache, but we all survived. And I also stood in another band, 1993. So I'm losing count here, but there was a French band, 6 Feet Over, from the north of France. Yeah, they just was like, "Do you want to play drums? We're going down to Spain. We're touring with Hiatus." And Chris from Health Hazard as well, he was drafted in on bass and Hiatus for that tour as well. So we just had this sort of summer holiday kind of tour thing, sort of moseying through France. And these guys is very, French and Walloon people, very like, we stop now, we take some wine, and this kind of thing, and like taking their fucking time, whereas we're like uptight British people, kind of, come on, when we're going to get there. So it's kind of a funny dynamic. And yeah, it was kind of a holiday tour as well as anything else, go on the beach and shit like that. Right. And there was a Health Hazard Witch Knot tour in France the same year. Sarah had bought a van at this point, and we went in that because Mickey and Karen's van was totaled. And the thing with the crash was that Fazzy got injured because we weren't all seat belted up. We were all sat on top of equipment or sat in the back, and those years of just I've done years and years of that, and then from that point onwards, it was like, first of all, just terrified of getting in a moving vehicle for quite a long time, quite traumatized. But
yeah,
and the rules for Sarah's van was it had room for 7 people and seatbelts, and there was no people were, can I get a lift? Can I get a lift along? People would pile in the van. There was no more of that shit, because it was like, you die in our van, and then your parents sue us or whatever, fuck that. So there was all that, become a bit more safety conscious. That takes us into 1994, and both bands were playing all over the place and stuff.
Kitchener is another band who makes an entrance here because
we toured with them.
Yeah, you toured with them, and you put the 7-inch out as well.
Well, yeah, the record label was just friends.
Oh yeah, if you just want to explain maybe the ethos or whatever, the Flat Earth label.
The label was just, it was. I'll concede it's a label, but I didn't really try to define it as such. It's more like, well, my friends are in this great band, so I want the people to hear the great band, So that's how it was. Sedition were a great band. Witch Not was a great band. Kitchener a great band, etc. You get the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing, that whole ethos was just that, and yeah, so our band was touring with our friend's band kind of thing.
1994 is also the year you take a big journey over to tour America for the first time, and that's with One by One. Yeah, if you'd like to tell a Hoover story, really, this is interesting.
So Vacuum Cleaners, as in Hoovers, I think they're still called Hoovers, or Vacuum Cleaners anyway. That company, Hoover, had put out this promotional offer. You bought a Hoover for about 100 quid, and when you did that, you got yourself 2 plane tickets to New York, which is insane. The factory was running full tilt, knocking out Hoovers just so people could get these fucking tickets. The guy whose idea it was, I believe, got fired because they were held to contract and they had to do this thing. So we all went out and bought Hoovers and got these tickets. Now, you weren't given a certain time slot that you could go. It was all a bit short notice. So in that way, it was a bit of a last minute arrangement of a tour. It was like as soon as we knew when the tickets were going out and we were all able to go together, then we could organize a tour, which was like 2 weeks notice. So Charles from Rorschach and Gern Blanston Records, he put out our 7-inch over there and also organized some gigs around, at short notice. So that was in New Jersey, New York area. So there we were, zooming off to America. Pretty good, eh? And playing at ABC No Rio and stuff,
Well, you can round the story off by the band that you played with. Is it the first show that you played with the band?
Shit,
yeah. Go on, that's it. Fucking, rounds it off nicely.
We had a gig as soon as we got off the plane. So anyway, Neil Robinson, who did Tribal War Records and sang in the band Final Warning, he, an English guy, lived in New York. We were staying with him, and he picked us up from the airport. Yeah, and we drove straight to the first gig, which was in New Jersey, John Hiltz's house. It was like a cellar show in a house. Much to my amusement, it was with the band Hoover, who made an album on Discord and stuff. I was really like that band, so it was kind of really pleased to. I couldn't really see them in this cellar behind backs of people's heads, but I just thought that was hilarious. I don't think anybody else did. And
no.
What was it? Sensefield played and Dead and Gone played, so it'd be quite a treat for 90s people like you.
Jesus, that would be one of my ultimate gigs, I think, of that era. That would be something else.
That's where we started out, but we were kind of fried and jet lagged, I think, as you would expect. But stayed at Charles's his folks' house, and then we got in the van and headed out to. We had gigs in Detroit, and we were heading out to Chicago and Minneapolis. The van sadly broke down about an hour out of Chicago, so we never got to play there, which would have been cool because it was like Los Crudos. Martin had booked the gig, and we were going to play with them, and that was another band I was really into. We hung around Kalamazoo for a couple of days, and then got sort of towed home or whatever, which is quite a long ride back. And then that was the tour was kind of done. But Charles had hooked us up with a WFMU session at the radio show, which was live to air. So, we had something to do, and we got decent recording out of that as well, which was pretty cool because a lot of our later songs never got recorded properly. So I'm glad there was that, It was just a nice setup in a sort of wooden house in suburbia, with just a basic 8-track, just stuff plugged in.
And
really nice, really informal, and it was just like on a Tuesday night or whatever it was. And it's great when recording's really simple. I think we had so much trouble recording our stuff back then, it was so pain in the arse of a thing. And that was like, you didn't really have a choice to fix it in the mix. You had to just fucking knock it out live, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
We were pretty tight by then as well, so.
Is this also the year that you're in the US again with the Final Warning Dirt tour?
We'd become friends with Neil Robinson. And Tribal War Records. I'd already traded records with him up to that point, so that's how we knew each other to start with. When we were there with One by One, I think, or not long after, and Neil was saying his band Final Warning were touring like all of America in September, October, and would I like to come over and play drums for him because their drummer had left, and it was kind of, wow, I get to go all around America playing drums. So I took them up on that, and they toured with the English band Dirt, who used to be on Crass Records and stuff. So, that's what I did in September and October that year. Like 7 weeks of tours, and got all the way across to California, and we played with Man as a Bastard, and I met Jello Biafra, and all these kind of cool things.
Regarding One by One and the people that you'd met when you were in America, the favour is returned when you play with Drop Dead and organise things for when they come over to play. And this is with Suffer this time.
Yeah, 1995 was when I first took on the sort of responsibility of booking a tour of a band, like, rather than just the odd gig. So it was quite a big undertaking, I was in touch with Drop Dead before, and then I'd met them when we were there with Final Warning as well. We played with them actually at CBGB's, and yeah, so I sort of met them, knew them a little bit, and then and they had faith in us to organise this spring in 95. Like it was a UK and European tour, and I was doing the UK part, and Carsten in Berlin from the band Pink Flamingos and many other bands was doing the European part, and with the band MVD from Berlin. So what happened is Drop Dead were flying in to England, I guess Heathrow or whatever, and they got quizzed at the immigration, and like, what are you doing here? Are you a band or something? I think there was an entry in one of their diaries, and it was something really vague, and they were just being picked apart by these fucking immigration people. And obviously I was a bit scared that they weren't going to get it in to the country. I got a phone call at about 8 a.m. with like, do you know this person, that person, and I'm kind of, yeah, and I don't know quite how to answer. Are they a band or something? They might have said to me, and I'll be, no, they're just friends coming to visit us. I can't remember how it all went, but we pressed the record. We had this tour booked, everything was on the line, and it was like kind of scary because there's always that uncertainty. Borders, people can just turn you around and fuck it all up. Anyway, it didn't happen. They got in. It's great. They got the bus up to Bradford, and the rest is history, as they say. So that was it. Yeah. So it was quite a big undertaking. Suffer. Yeah, we had Sarah's van, and Suffer went in that. We Dropped Dead. That was like 7 people, and met up with MVD, the German crew, and that's it. That was a tour. And then in the summer of 95, there was a few things happening in Leeds, again, and there was all the people from the band Headache and the French crew had taken over 120 Rats, was squat in Leeds. And there was some really great gigs down there, and great times down there.
This would be the sort of Leeds 6 and Leeds 7.
Yeah, that was in Leeds 7. And in Leeds 6, there was basement gigs. So, you had Suffer played a gig with like Polaris and Bob Tilton and Baby Harp Seal, and this sort of, like Grover. It was like just a variety of music, but all under the same sort of, just a friends kind of banner, And I like that sort of energy, and it was like this younger generation of people, really talented players, some good people. So it was a bit different. It just made a change from I'd had my nose to the grindstone in Bradford quite a lot, and it was nice to get over there, do some of that stuff. And then the last half of 1995, again, I was on a moonlighting or whatever in another band, and that was Oi Polloi. Said, right, the time has come. So for the last 6 months of that year, I was basically on tour with them. We went to Finland and Poland and Scandinavia, and then a huge German tour at the end of it, which was like 33 gigs in a row or something, but really short drives. So it was kind of quite luxurious. But You see, on these long tours, the same with that American one, the 7-week one, is after a few weeks, it just becomes your normal life. And it was a great time. It was an Earth First tour, so it wasn't just bands. There was like info stalls and various things like that came along. It was a bit of a circus going around on this tour. It was really well organized and really good. It was very interesting. And I just arrived back home in December, like totally broken, because I'd fell down a flight of stairs and burnt my hand and
lost the plot,
bust my leg.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like just hid away for a few months until I recovered. And then in 1996, the 1 in 12 people organized the trip to Barcelona for May Day, actually. And it was about 40 people went or something crazy. It was was pretty special, I know it's not to do with bands or anything, but it was like a tour, like a trip to Barcelona. And that was lovely. And, sort of fell in love with Barcelona. It's a great place,
So 95, 96 is pretty crucial point as well, because there is the mail out, which when I was young and kind of trying to find out information, it was like a really valuable thing that happened at a period in time.
Yeah, life before the internet.
Yeah, totally.
So the mail out was, well, we had a record label and other people had, record labels or whatever, like the fanzines and whatever people were putting out. And it was Richard Corbridge who did On With Anger Records. It was his idea. I guess he had a mail out himself. I guess our mode of operation was just being on tour, flogging stuff on tour. But anyway, Richard had like a mailing list of his own, to people who'd bought stuff off him, and he would send stuff out. But then it made sense to just pool it together with everybody and create this pack of all the different flyers that people might want to do. So that's how it came about. You would pay some money to have your stuff included in the mail out, and that would go towards the stamps. And we would get together at 1 in 12 Club on the big snooker table up in the top floor and lay out all these piles of different people's flyers and stuff envelopes, and a bunch of people would come through, Richard, On With Anger, you had us, you had like Crackle Records, Becky would be there was just volunteers from down the club and stuff, and I forget all the names of every distro ever, it doesn't really matter, but if you had a flyer you wanted to get to the people, you could put it into the mail out. It was good value for money, and people getting the mail out, it was a buzz, isn't it, getting a fucking pack of stuff through,
getting a load of lists through is great.
Stamp,
Yeah.
That's how we did it before the internet. Yeah, and it was quite a crucial 90s thing, I think. That's the state of the DIY kind of network at that time. And we sort of developed it a little bit later on in the 90s and made a little zine that went with it and stuff, and, beefed it up a bit according to what we could afford to do. And yeah, it was, I love doing shit like that. It was great. And it was, it's just doing something together with other people. It's kind of just fun,
I wish I'd still kept some of those things to look back on now, because it was just like
I've got quite a few of them, actually. They're just stashed away. I'm going to dig them out, but they're under the bed. Can't be bothered.
Yeah, just take some pictures of them or something, like a time capsule, isn't it?
Yeah, because I was trying to work out exactly how it got done.
1996 is also the year that Suffer travels over to America and you play with Drop Dead. What was happening at this point?
We were pals with Drop Dead, and obviously from this European British tour, and then they returned the favour, and organised. They were organising their tour for summer of '96 and invited us over. It was like 2 or 3 weeks, and we went up to Canada as well during this time.
Destinations, I know Minneapolis is one, isn't it?
I think we got as far over as Minneapolis, and then headed up through, and then back Detroit and through Canada and back to New York. Sort of New York, Rhode Island based, where they're from. Oh, but during this, it was Richmond, Virginia we were at when I just remember, it was fun, but our band was kind of falling apart in a way. We didn't massively fall out or anything, but I certainly had a moment where I was just like, right, I'm kind of done with all this stuff. I don't want to do, much as I was having a great time with everyone, it was like, I kind of don't want to do bands. I needed, so I was kind of ready to pack it in, and the others were too, I don't know. And I mean, Chris was playing in Doom by then as well, and I think Alec probably just wanted a break from years and years of just fucking grueling touring, maybe.
Yeah.
Can't speak for these people, but after the tour, we kind of just didn't really do anything else. So I was out of bands at this point. For the first time in many years. I was like 30 something, and I'd finished with all this band stuff, apparently.
So at the end of 96, you returned the favour once again by inviting Drop Dead over and Los Kudos. Because I remember seeing both bands within the sort of same a month period, like 4-week period. Fucking just mind blown to me at that point in time. And this is the first time, I'd met you, and it's just important from a personal perspective. This is when you switch to more your tour management or like organisation for bands coming over and things.
Well, yeah, I wasn't playing in bands anymore, but I had plenty going on. Kudos and Drop Dead was like, they were doing big European tours as well. I just did the UK bits from those tours, just picking them up and dropping them off at Dover or whatever. So I wasn't in charge of the whole thing. But
you were pressing like the Kudos album and stuff as well, weren't you?
Yeah, so I did a pressing of the album at the time, the Canciones album.
Because I remember you selling that. I bought a copy, and it was with the kind of glue-on back cover as well, because they weren't finished in time or something for the...
Yeah, it was all... Quite a lot of the releases around that time were just hastily, not hastily put together, but just like arriving just before the deadline, before going off on tour and things like that. So that was one of them, and the sleeve, and I was like, we were having to stick this bit of paper on the back of the sleeve for my flat. I remember it in between gigs, and then I got some T-shirts printed and stuff. This is quite high level for the likes of me. So all these bands had to come and play through our like really cheap, crappy equipment. But them were the days. It was hard time, etc., etc. The last part of 1996 was, I went round UK and Ireland with Kudos and Drop Dead for about 2 weeks each. Now, people talk about UK tours, and sometimes they talk about that, and they don't mention that it's only fucking England. There's a lot of people say that shit, and it's English exceptionalism. Just fuck off. Anyway, it was important to get to Scotland. It was important to get to Ireland. It was important to get to Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland. For me, at least, to show you around the whole bit, And sadly, we could never find a gig in Wales. I don't know if they were in the throes of pop punk wilderness years at that time or whatever. But I'd love to have got a gig in Wales as well, just to have done the lot. Anyway, State of Fear came over from the USA. They had records on Profane Existence and stuff. They were raging. Jay had been in Disrupt before that, and John had been in Deformed Conscious before that, so I knew John before. That's how we met up and hooked up, and they were on some gigantic European tour, so I just did the UK kind of dates on that. And like Sawn Off was the band UK band that I paired it up with, who I knew all Sawn Off from before, from before they were Sawn Off, really. Known Scalesy since the 80s and stuff, and I knew Ash from Embittered, and Chrissy was in Ebola, and Dickie was in Needlestick with Andy Stick was in Needlestick, and on it goes. It's like all just part of a tapestry of life or something.
Yeah.
And there was a tour with Ebola, and there was a tour with Doom, and I'm starting to blur a bit now.
Yeah.
It's just like
Ebola and Sawn Off around here. Saw them pretty much every local gig. There was a big. Well, they're pretty much the lineups are kind of. There's a lot of members kind of running through both bands.
Yeah, or ex-members of other. There's a family tree going on there for sure. And the Ashcore.
Ashcore. Yeah, if you just want to explain, just explain Ashcore, because when I first heard it, I was like, I didn't know what it was. But yeah, if you could just
listen to Sawn Off and just carry on from there. So 1998, okay, I started playing in a band again called John Holmes. I was in the first lineup of that band, and we did a few tours over the following couple of years, and I left. They carried on. In 1998, I booked a few gigs for His Hero Was Gone from America around the UK. They were on a big European tour, as bands were back then, and that was with John Holmes. And later in the year, booked Detestation, who I already knew from the US, and with the band Urco from Boston, UK, which was, a lot. They were just funniest guys ever and stuff, and Urco. And so that was fun. And then Submission Hold in October with Red Monkey, and Drop Dead again. Anyway, I've been doing this tour thing for, and bands and tours and records and tours for quite a few years now. My ultimate story of the end of the 90s, before I left Bradford, would be there was a place called the Cathedral Centre where like Doleys could do things like screen print and learn computers and things like that. And I did a thing there, talking magazines, talking books, cassettes for the blind.
Yeah.
And they had the Cool Edit Pro, which I still use as a sort of software. That led me down the path of, editing audio stuff and getting, all that kind of thing that I've done since. And it was fun putting these little shows together, these items, features, and these little cassettes to send out, So I kind of got a buzz from that. And when I was there was really just beaten down, disheveled, broken looking kind of 50-odd-year-old guys there, being bossed around by this woman who had like her hands on the sort of bus money or something, or lunch money. And she was just sort of treating these guys really bad. And I just thought, fucking hell, like for a moment, I could just see myself being one of these kind of old, beaten down, fucked guys who's broken. And I had to step up and do something about myself and improve my life. Anyway, so that led to me applying to go to college in Leeds. And from that's me into the 2000s. And I went on to do like media production at Leeds, and that really sort of boosted me up, and I'm into another chapter of my life. But that's enough for that decade, I think.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's action-packed, non-stop.
Got a question. This is a listener question from Neil Turpin, and it's a drumming question, which I've never asked and I'm interested in. It's how and when did you start playing? Who were your influences? And did you teach yourself to play?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I'm self-taught and in pretty much everything. It's kind of how I roll, my ethos.
Yeah.
And I could play the guitar, but I had a kind of ceiling on. I can play it a bit, but I'm not really I didn't really take to it all that much, and it's more like I'm competent, I suppose, as best as it goes. I ended up just playing raw rhythmic, almost hitting it. So it's like basically, just when you hit stuff in rhythm, I might as well fucking play drums. So self-taught, I had like a pair of drumsticks, and I'd hit the bed with one stick and hit my Spider-Man annual with the other stick. That would be the snare and the bass drum. And then I had a friend that left some drums at my house, and it was in the living room for a while, and I ended up sort of playing along to fucking Blondie or something, or with headphones on, and something like that, and just getting the 4/4 time. And then that was kind of it, really. But then when we were at the station and Gateshead and everything like that, it was the band Public Disturbance, were like kind of Chaos UK Disorder kind of noisy band, and their drummer had quit, and I stood in on them and did a couple of gigs. That was my first gigs at drumming, and which was fun to do, and then Generic started up. Drummers, man, they're quite rare, aren't they, really? So
yeah,
I thought I was a guitarist, but I ended up being a drummer somehow.
What was your kind of influences, or who inspired, when the faster stuff came along?
Well, when crazy fast stuff came up, like Heresy and Siege and Napalm Death and stuff, that was amazing, and I would try and do that. I couldn't really do it any kind of quantity like that. I'm not really that good at it, but just the madness and the chaos of playing fast and stuff was fun,
Name some drumming influences.
Well, Bill Ward, Jackie Lieberzit from Cannes, for the sheer repetition. Bill Ward's a no-brainer for just fucking Bill Ward.
Yeah.
Ian Pace, Deep Purple, Stuart Copeland from The Police, who I saw live. I was like 15, and that was incredible drummer, and just sort of stopped me in my tracks. And there's loads more. My friends, Pete Darlow from Kitchener, and Neil Turpin, in fact, and I could go on and on and on. Some stuff with a bit of swing in it, is what I like, a bit of swing within my drums, and it's something you can't always quite explain to people. Sometimes it just isn't working. Sometimes I don't know how to explain rhythm. It's sort of beyond consciousness. I don't know how to put any of this. I'm sorry. I'm losing it now, man.
searching for something that doesn't exist. Fight the good fight! Watching us to be right! And Grammy, at the best of the night! I sleep on the wall of God! Cancer, and empty face! Not selling fun! Alienated, not selling fun! Trapping us, resisted, resisted! Never celebrate life. Stop suicide banging basement trash. Bastards with a wedge. Fight for government. Fight for life. Still crumbling. My zombies are tonight. A burning decade. Fail anytime. Lose something. Something that's outside. Illuminate. There's illuminate.